All right, let's talk about what really makes or breaks a project. We're getting into the nitty-gritty of project budgeting. And look, it's so much more than just a spreadsheet full of numbers. Think of it as the actual blueprint that takes a really cool idea and turns it into something real. So yeah, let's jump right in.
Okay, so just think about this for a second. You've got these huge, multi-million-dollar projects, massive construction, complex software rollouts. What's the one thing that keeps them from just completely falling apart? It's not just about having a great idea or even working super hard. It's something much, much more basic than that.
And this is the key idea we're going to explore. A lot of people think of a budget as this restrictive thing, right? But it's not. It's the project's financial skeleton. Seriously, everything else, every person, every deadline, every single choice you make, it all connects back to it. Without that strong skeleton, the whole thing just crumbles. So why does this financial skeleton matter so much? Well, this is where the rubber meets the road. It's where your brilliant technical plan has to face financial reality. Every single decision, every material you buy, every hour someone works, it all gets boiled down to dollars and cents right here.
And here's the thing. Without that baseline, you're basically flying blind. I mean, how do you even know if you're on track? How can you possibly control your spending? Or, just as important, prove to your stakeholders that this project is actually worth it? The budget is your yardstick. It lets you see what you planned to spend versus what you're actually spending, so you can make smart decisions instead of just guessing.
Okay, so if we're sticking with this skeleton idea, then what are the actual bones made of? Let's break down the anatomy of a real project budget. There are 5 key pieces, and you've got to understand them all to build a financial plan that's actually going to hold up. So here they are, the 5 bones of the budget. You've got your direct costs, indirect costs, and capital costs. Then, and this is super important, you have 2 kinds of safety nets for when things inevitably go sideways, the contingency reserve and the management reserve. Let's dig into what each of these actually means.
First up, we have direct costs. These are pretty much what you'd expect. They're the most obvious expenses, and honestly, they're usually the biggest chunk of the budget. We're talking about things like the salaries for your team, the materials you need to build something, the steel, the sensors, even paying a specialist contractor. Basically, if you can point directly at a task and say, this money is for that, it's a direct cost.
Then you've got indirect costs. You'll often hear these called overhead. These are all the shared costs that, keep the lights on. They're essential, but you can't really tie them to one specific task. Think about the office rent, the electricity bill, or the salaries for HR and admin folks. They're not physically part of what you're building, but let's be real, the project would grind to a halt without them.
Okay, now this is a really, really important distinction to get right. We've got 2 different pots of money for risk. First, the contingency reserve. This is for risks you know about, the known unknowns. You've thought about them, you put them in your risk register, like the price of steel might go up. The project manager gets to decide when to use this money. But then, you have the management reserve. This is for the stuff you have no idea is coming, the unknown unknowns, a completely unexpected event like a brand new regulation. This fund is a bigger deal, so it's controlled by senior management, not the PM.
So let's see how this all stacks up in a real-world example. Imagine we're building an automated conveyor system. You can see our direct costs are 200 grand, we've got 30,000 in indirect costs. And that 50,000 for capital cost, that's for buying a big piece of equipment, a major asset. Then we add our safety nets, about 22,000 or 8% for the risks we know about, and another 8,000 or 3% for the risks we don't. And boom, add it all up, and you get your total project budget.
All right, so we know all the bones that make up our skeleton. But how do we actually build it? How do we figure out the numbers to begin with? Well, that's where cost estimation techniques come in. These are the tools of the trade for actually putting a price tag on all those different parts. So let's look at 2 totally different ways to do this. On one end, you've got analogous estimating, or top-down. It's super fast, super simple. You just look at a similar project you did in the past and say, this one is probably going to cost about the same. Perfect for when you're just starting out and don't have a lot of details. Then you have the complete opposite, bottom-up estimating. Here you break the entire project down into the smallest possible tasks, cost out every single one, and then add it all back up. It takes forever, but man, is it accurate.
But what happens when just picking one number feels way too risky? That's where 3-point estimating is a lifesaver. Instead of one guess, you make 3. What's the best case, optimistic cost? What's the worst case, pessimistic cost? And what's the most likely cost? The formula then crunches those numbers, giving more weight to the most likely one, and spits out a much more realistic, risk-aware estimate for you to work with.
And this chart here is a great little cheat sheet.
It basically tells you which tool to pull out of your toolbox and when. If you're in the early days and don't have much information, Analogous is your best friend. Low effort, low accuracy, but it gets you started. But if you have a super detailed plan, you're going to need the high effort, high accuracy of a bottom-up estimate. It's all about picking the right approach for where you are in the project.
Okay, look, creating the budget is really just step one. The real power of a budget comes out when the project is actually underway. This isn't some document you create once and then file away in a drawer to collect dust. It's a living, breathing tool that you need to be using constantly. So let's see what that actually looks like.
You've probably heard of the project management triangle. Every single project is this constant balancing act between three things: the scope, what you're building; the time, how long it takes; and the cost, how much it, costs. You can't change one without affecting the others. If a client suddenly wants to add a bunch of new features, that's going to cost more money or take more time. The budget is the guardian of that cost corner. It forces everyone to have those really important conversations about trade-offs.
And here's how you use it to stay in control. Your budget gives you your planned cost. Then, as you go, you track what you're actually spending. The gap between those two numbers is called the variance. When you see a variance pop up, like in this chart where the actual cost is creeping higher, that's your signal. It tells the project manager, hey, you need to look into this right now and fix it before it becomes a huge problem.
And that really is the key takeaway here. A good budget means you're not just running on gut feelings anymore. You're replacing guesswork with actual data. It gives a project manager the power to make smart, objective decisions based on what's really happening with the money. And it gives them the hard evidence they need to back up those decisions when they talk to stakeholders.
So that brings up a huge question, right? Who actually owns the budget? Who's responsible for all this? It can get a little confusing, but I find the best way to think about it is like a team sport, one that has a very, very clear captain. Because it really is a team effort. You need the engineer's expertise for the technical details. What stuff do we need? How long will it take? You need the accountant to check the numbers and make sure everything's above board. But at the end of the day, the project manager is the captain of the ship. They're the one who pulls all that information together, creates the final budget, and is ultimately accountable for keeping the project on track financially.
So I want to leave you with a little scenario to think about. Put yourself in the project manager's shoes. You had a healthy 10% contingency fund, your buffer for problems you know might happen. But now, it's just been slashed to 3%. So, what do? What tough choices are you forced to make? Do you start using cheaper materials? Do you have to cut features from the project? That is the reality of project budgeting. It's a world of hard, data-driven decisions, all resting on that crucial financial skeleton.